Greetings and welcome back to room 303 and our AP lectures on the Iliad. This is lecture number 10, translating by Robert Fagel's Marauding Through the Night. Now, hey, I'm just going to say this out loud. There's a bit of disturbing violence in this book that we're going to have to deal with and maybe ask a little bit about some of the implications of. Now, if you haven't been following my lectures on LearnStrong.net, hit that site, go to the AP folder, and find my earlier lectures on the Iliad 1 through 9. Let's just review quickly. In Book 1, we've got the invocation of the Muse, and of course, Achilles versus Agamemnon. Book 2, we've got Agamemnon's bad dream, as we call it, a dream sent from Zeus that's actually a fooled dream. He says you're going to win, but in fact, it's going to go brutal for him. And of course, the catalog of the ships and all of that. In Iliad 3, we've got Paris versus Menelaus. It looks like Paris has defeated, Menelaus has won. The war is over. Book 4, Paris says to Zeus, no way. And then we've got, of course, Pandarus, who's going to shoot his little arrow and into Menelaus and wound him. And now we've got the war starting all over. Book 5 is Diomedes' Aristeia, as we use that term. Again, just a scene of a special kind of fighting that's going to happen. And Diomedes in this book 5 will actually wound both Aphrodite and Ares. He's like larger than life fighter. Book 6, really important book. We've got Hector back in the city of Troy with Andromache and Astyanax, his son. And this will be the last time that he speaks to them. In Book 7, we've got the two great warriors of Ajax, of the Greeks, and Hector of the Trojans fight, and they kind of come to a truce because neither one can win. In Book 8, we've got Zeus and his famous scales, and the decision is made that Trojans are in fact now, along with Hector, going to jack the Greeks. In Book 9, that's that hugely important book where Agamemnon decides to send that embassy of Odysseus and Phinox and Ajax, and Achilles says no. I've also given a review of books 1 through 9 that I call Achilles' Crisis of Faith, where I talk about the fact that Achilles is really struggling by Book 9. We're going to see this played out in the rest of the Iliad. He's really struggling with the fact that he no longer accepts that worldview of Time and Kleos that's fundamental to what it means to be a Greek warrior. Now again, the hope is that you're doing the annotative work on your own and then coming to me to use my lectures as aid. Everything we're talking about is, of course, built on our learning theory of connecting new information to old information in meaningful ways. And then, of course, our 3 levels of reading annotations are the way we do this. At level 1, what does the text say? Summarizing. At level 2, what does the text mean? At 2a, themes, messages. And at 2b, we're looking at the rhetoric. Not what necessarily Homer the poet says, but how he says it. Here we're concentrating specifically at 2b on symbolism and irony. And then finally at level 3, how can I relate to this text in some meaningful way? First at 3a to other texts, especially to earlier books of the Iliad, and then finally to other texts I know, and then finally, how can I relate this information to me personally? That's the way as AP students that we learn how to, what we call in 303, own the text, right? It becomes ours. All right, let's do a real quick, brief summary of Book 10. There are some people who see this as kind of a throwaway book. In other words, it's not that big of a deal if you read it. I'm inclined to argue that no books of the Iliad are throwaway books, and that everyone is important in building a larger argument that I hope we're going to be able to make later on. Agamemnon and Menelaus can't sleep. They are worried. Worried, of course, about the fact that 1,000 Trojan fires are sitting right outside on the other side of the ramparts that they have built to try to defend their ships. So they both get up. Agamemnon runs into Menelaus. Menelaus runs into Agamemnon. They both can't sleep, and they both go wake Nestor, the old man. Then they wake Odysseus. We need tactics. We need information about what these Trojans are doing. They check. This is huge for this book, and I think implications for this book. They check on the sentries, the watchmen for the Greeks, and all of them are awake and alert. That's a big deal. Why? Because later in this book, that will not be the case for the Trojans and those who are fighting to defend the Trojans, right? Nestor will say we need spies. Diomedes will volunteer, and then Diomedes will get to choose who it is that will go with him, and he chooses Odysseus. Together, Odysseus and Diomedes leave to spy. They get a good luck sign given by Athena. We'll talk about that one. Hector then will do the same gig from the other side, and he will send a guy named Dolan, who's kind of a flat character in many ways. He's just kind of a fool. He's sent out to spy. Odysseus and Diomedes catch Dolan, He will confess everything on the hope that he will be ransomed, and then Diomedes will jack him and cut off his head. I told you there's some violence, and it begins here. Just completely severs his head, right? By the way, part of that story is Odysseus lied to Dolan and said, dude, we're not going to kill you, we just want information, and then we'll ransom you. The minute he gives all the information, they jack him. And they take his armor, and they're going to give his armor as a gift to Athena as an offering, right? Odysseus and Diomedes then sneak into a Thracian camp, right? They are supporters of the Trojans. Diomedes will slaughter while they're sleeping 10 or 12 of the men there, and Odysseus will steal these unbelievably beautiful horses that he will then drive back into the Greek camp. They return to the Greek camp with hugs and laughter. Diomedes and Odysseus will clean up, get a bath, they eat, and they drink. That line that all is fair in love and war has to bring this book to mind. But of course, notice we have very little fighting at night, and some will in fact argue after the fact, namely the Romans, that these Greeks, remember their great hero for the Romans is Aeneas, right? That the Greeks, they were kind of cheaters. I mean, they were cheaters when they fought at night. They were cheaters when they introduced that Trojan horse into the project and all of that. We'll talk more about that one in later lectures. All right, let's go ahead now, study a few lines closely here, starting as we like to do with the opening lines. And they begin for us, so by the ships, the other lords of Achaea's army slept all night long, overcome by gentle sleep, but not the great field marshal Agamemnon. The sweet embrace of sleep could not hold him. Obviously, he's just been told Achilles ain't coming back. He's probably sailing and going away. Agamemnon's now starting to get worried. His mind kept churning, seething, like Zeus's, watch this epic simile, like Zeus's thunderbolts when the lord of bright-haired Hera flashes lightning, threatening to lose torrential rains, or pelting hail or snow when a blizzard drifts on fields, or driving on somewhere on earth the giant jaws of rending war. So, again, epic similes begin with like or as and then end with the word so. So thick and fast the groans came from Atrides, wrenching his chest, heaving up from his heart, and rocked his very spirit to the core. Now as he scanned across the Trojan plain, Agamemnon marveled in horror at those fires, thousands of fires of the Trojans, 1,000 fires blazing against the walls of Troy, and the shrill of pipes and flutes and low roar of men. In other words, the Trojans are having a good time tonight because tomorrow they're going to jack some people, right? The Greeks. And now as he glanced back at Achaea's troops and ships, he tore out his hair by the roots. This is a traditional way to show that you're very upset. We're going to see this later with Priam when he loses his boy Hector. He looked to Zeus on high, groaning from the depths of his proud and battled heart. But soon this recourse struck his mind at best. He would go, approach the son of Neleus first, and see if Nestor would work out something with him, some foolproof plan that just might ward disaster off the Achaean forces. The irony, of course, will be that it doesn't matter what plan they put together, Zeus has already willed that the Trojans are going to destroy many, many of the Greeks. Why? Because Achilles has asked his mama Thetis to make it so. And so remember that, scales and all of that. Okay? Agamemnon stumbles into Menelaus, who is, of course, out looking for him as well. Menelaus can't either, sleep. And then Agamemnon will say to Menelaus, tactics, my noble Menelaus. I'm at line 4950. That's what we need now, you and I both, and cunning tactics too. Something to shield and save our men and ships, since Zeus's heart is turned. By the way, this is exactly what Achilles told Ajax, Odysseus, and Phaenox to go back and say to Agamemnon, you figure it out. You got all your generals. You're smart enough. Irony, obviously, dripping from Achilles' words, right? Since Zeus's heart is turned, his mighty heart is set on Hector's offerings more than ours. I've never seen or heard tell of a single man wrecking so much havoc in one day as Hector, Zeus's favorite, wrecks against our troops. And all on his own, no son of god or goddess. He's made a slaughter, I tell you. Pain for Achaeans enough to last us down the years to come. What blows he's dealt our men. And again, I'll go back to what I said earlier in an earlier lecture. It's always fascinating to readers who say, wait, isn't this like a Greek poem? This is not like a Trojan poem. This is a Greek poem, right? It is. Well, then how come for so much of the poem, the Greeks are jacked, they're destroyed, they're being attacked, etc., etc.? And of course the answer is, well, remember, it all comes back to the fact that, as was just said, this is all because Zeus has willed it to be so. This is the point. We are better warriors as Greeks than those Trojans, but we weren't allowed to be better warriors because of Zeus and his foolishness. Now we need some tactics. In other words, we got to figure out a way to hurt the Trojans because they're going to hurt us, right? Agamemnon does wake Nestor, and there's this question about Menelaus in this exchange that's kind of fascinating. And in fact, Nestor will say, I will blame Menelaus, loved as he is and honored. Even if you will wheel on me in anger, I must. I can't hide it now. How that fellow sleeps. Now, there's not a lot said, interestingly, about Menelaus in this poem. Way more said about Agamemnon, Odysseus, Diomedes, and obviously Achilles. Menelaus is in many ways the Greek equivalent, in this regards, to what Paris is for the Trojans. And here Nestor is saying, I don't know, of course they're there because Menelaus lost his wife Helen to Paris, and there seems to be at times some suggestion that maybe Menelaus and Helen were not that close or something, right? Notice he says, how that fellow sleeps, turning over the work to you alone. He's speaking to Agamemnon. Now is the time for him to work, to hunt the leading captains and beg them all for help. Desperate straits, we can't hold out much longer. Agamemnon replies, you're right, O soldier. I'd even urge you to fault him any other day. So often he hangs back. So notice you've got older brother like Hector saying about Paris. Now you've got older brother Agamemnon speaking about Menelaus. With no heart for the work. Not that he shrinks from action, skittish or off guard. It's just that he looks to me, waiting for me to make the first move. Sounds often like younger brothers for older brothers, right? This time, though, he woke before me, came and roused me first, and I sent him off to call the men hereafter. So let's move out, overtake the rest at the gates with the sentries, where I ordered them to group. So we then will have Nestor, who will wake Odysseus and Diomedes is going to compliment Nestor in a very interesting compliment. So Nestor prodded line 190, and Diomedes woke from sleep with a quick start and burst of winging words, and this is what he said, a hard man you are, old soldier, hard. You never give up the good fight, do you? Where are the younger troopers now? We need them. Why don't they go wake each king in turn, paddling softly up and down through camp? You, old man, you'd overpower us all. And of course, you can get the sense. Nestor loves to talk about the fact that he's old. He also loves to talk about the fact that he's still a virile warrior, even though he's old. And here, this is a great compliment, of course. Notice as well, there seems to be the suggestion that's generational between the two different kinds of fighters, right? So you've got the older kind of fighters represented by Nestor, and then you've got the younger men kind of like represented by Diomedes, right? Then they're going to check to see if the guards are in fact awake, and Nestor will compliment them. So you got some complimenting going on here. And he says it at line 225 or so. Keep it up, my boys. That's the way to watch. Not one of you submit to the grip of sleep. You'd give great joy to the men who'd take our lives. In other words, you're awake. You're defending all who sleep. Why is this significant? Because here in a little bit we got some foreshadowing. We are going to have some Trojan associates who will in fact be slaughtered. But the reason they're slaughtered is because the sentries aren't doing their job. They're not paying attention. Here, notice Nestor compliments them and says, good job, boys. Nestor will then say, we need spies. Diomedes will then volunteer, and he will choose Odysseus. Now, it's kind of interesting, and it's an interesting aside at line 281 or so, that Diomedes is a little, you know, maybe concerned about who is going with him, because obviously he's got to have somebody that takes his back. And Diomedes, strong with the war cry, says, is it an order? Is that an order? Pick my own comrade? Then how could I pass up royal Odysseus here? His heart so game, his fighting edge so keen, the best of us all in every combat mission. Athena loves the man. With him at my side, we go through fire and make it back alive. No one excels the mastermind of battle. It's interesting that he mentions Athena is always supporting Odysseus. We'll mention obviously more of this when we study the Odyssey together. But much enduring Odysseus cut him short about the complimenting. Notice this is a book of compliments, right? Motif of the compliment. But Odysseus says, not too long on the praise. Don't fault me either. You're talking to Argive men who know my record. Let's move out. The night is well on its way. Day breaks near. The stars go wheeling by. The full of the dark is gone. 2 watches down, but the third's still ours for action. It's interesting that Odysseus says, you don't have to compliment me in front of these men. I fought with these men. They all know what I'm capable of. In other words, Odysseus is the kind of guy who lets his actions speak for him, right? Okay? So they get ready to go, and they kind of gear up, as any Aristeia, you got to get geared up and everything. And on their way out, we're told at line 3:18 or so, and so, both harnessed up in the grim gear of war, the two men moved out, leaving behind them all the captains clustered on the spot. Athena winged a heron, a bird, close to their path and veering right. So the sound of the bird, it's dark, so they hear the sound of the bird. Neither man could see it scanning the dark sky. They only heard its cry. Glad for the lucky sign, Odysseus prayed to Pallas. Athena, hear me, daughter of Zeus, who shieldest thunder, standing by me always in every combat mission. No maneuver of mine slips by you. Now, again, give me your best support, Athena, comrade. Grant our return in glory back to the warships once we've done some feat that brings the Trojans pain. We're told that they stalk like lions. Their prayers rose to Pallas Athena, line 345. Athena heard them. Once they'd appealed to Zeus's mighty daughter, into the dark night they went like two lions. And it's a simile that we're going to see a lot of fighters that are like related to animals, especially lions. Stalking through the carnage and the corpses, lots of dead bodies everywhere, through piles of armor and black pools of blood. So out into the darkness they sneak, going and trying to find someone, right? Hector, we're told, also needs a spy. And so we're over on line 370 and following, right? This one volunteered among the Trojans named Dolon. And Hector will say, and he says to Hector, Hector, the mission stirs my fighting blood. I'll reconnoiter the ships and gather all I can. Come, raise that scepter and swear you'll give me the battle team and the burnished brazen car that carry great Achilles. I will be your spy. In other words, he says, when we win this war, I want Achilles' famous chariot and the ponies that go with it. Interesting irony, of course, is we'll finish this book with some ponies being stolen and brought back, but it isn't going to be anything that's Dolan's, right? And no mean scout, I'll never let you down. The ironies, of course, are mounting here. Dolan will fold, as they say, like a cheap suit. He says, I'll infiltrate their entire army, I will, all the way till I reach the ship of Agamemnon. That's where the captains must be mapping tactics now, whether they'll break and run or stand and fight. How he begged, and Hector, grasping his scepter, swore a binding oath. Now Zeus, my witness, thundering lord of Hera, no other Trojan fighter will ride behind that team. None but you, I swear, they will be your glory all your life to come. Well, the ironies start to mount. You almost wonder if Hector's saying this to this guy named Dolan, going, yeah, I'll say my last regards to you now as you get ready to leave, because that's exactly what happens. Dolan leaves. Odysseus sees him. They hide among the corpses. They let Dolan go past them so that he's cut off from his troops. And then they will catch Dolan. I'm at line 435 or so. He flung his shield, Diomedes. He flung his shaft, missing Dolan on purpose, over his right shoulder. The sharp spear point winged and stabbed the earth. He doesn't want to kill him. He wants information from Dolan, right? Dead in his tracks, he stopped Dolan, terrified, stammering, teeth chattering in his mouth, blood white with fear. As the two men overtook him and, panting hard, yanked and pinned his arms, he burst into tears, pleading, take me alive, I'll ransom myself, treasures cram our house. He's wealthy. Bronze and gold and plenty of well-brought iron. Father would give you anything gladly, priceless ransom, if only he learns I'm still alive in our guy's ships. Now this is not unusual that you would beg for your life, but here everything's going to end for Dolan quite tragic. Odysseus, quick with the tactics, answered, courage, death is your least worry, put your mind at rest, come. Tell me the truth now, point by point. Why prowling among the ships, cut off from camp, alone in the dead of night when other men are sleeping? To loot the fallen, one of the fighters' corpses? Or did Hector send you out to spy on our ships, reconnoiter them stem to stern? Or did your own itch for glory spur you on? Well, obviously his itch for glory did spur him on. Dolan, like we said, will give up everything. He tells all, and after he has told all, he says at line 510, okay, now will you take me to your ships or leave me here, bound and gagged right here, till you can make your raid and test my story? See, I've told the truth, or I've been lying. He basically tells them everything about the Trojan troops, where they are, who's defenseless, etc., etc. But rugged Diomedes gave him a grim look. Escape? Take my advice and wipe it from your mind. Good as your message is, you're in my hands now. What if we set you free, or you should slip away? Back you'll slink to our fast ships tomorrow, playing the spy again, or fighting face to face. But if I snuff your life out in my hands, you'll never ignore our Argive lines again. With that, just as Dolan reached up for his chin to cling with a frantic hand and beg for life, in other words, he goes into that posture we've talked about where he submits and asks for his life. Diomedes struck him square across the neck, a flashing hack of the sword, both tendons snapped, and the shrieking head went tumbling in the dust. Whoa! They tore the weasel cap from the head. By the way, there's been some interesting stuff about that cap. And there's even a history of the cap that's given of Odysseus when he put his on, and here they tear his weasel cap from his head, strip the wood pelt, the reflex bow, long tough spear, and swinging the trophies high to Pallas, queen of plunder, exultant royal Odysseus shouted out his prayer. Here, goddess, rejoice in these, they're yours. And he is. He's going to donate them up to Athena at the end. You're the first of all the gods we'll call. Now guide us again, Athena. Guide us against that Thracian camp and horses. Odysseus wants the horses, and so they're going to go. And notice that this is in no way, this decapitation of Dolan, an act that's understood as in any way being wrong or unjust or any of those kinds of things. The argument is simple. If we let him live, he's going to come back and try and spy some more. He'll be a problem for us later. Let's just jack him now, okay? It's an interesting question why sometimes in the Iliad, ransom is provided or relief is provided and death is not given, and other times it is given. We'll think, as we foreshadow it, we'll have a famous scene where Achilles will do the same. A guy begs for his life. Ironically, he's been ransomed already once, caught by Achilles, and then we're going to see that Achilles says no more. Okay, we'll turn now to line 555. Athena, eyes blazing because they sneak up on these Thracians. Breathed fury in Diomedes, and he went whirling into the slaughter now. Now he's killing sleeping men.